up, guys? Welcome back to the second episode of the Fratsketball podcast.
How are you doing, Matt?
Alrighty. I am doing absolutely extravagant. How are you?
I'm great. So today, guys, we are going to be talking about kind of just some random things that we've been wanting to talk about so far this season. I have 5 things. Matt has 5 things. Matt, what's your first topic that you're talking about today?
So, the first thing that I have today is it's kind of a mixture of two things, actually. The first part of it is I have how credible is Monty Williams 2021-2022 Coach of the Year when the Suns went 63-18? Was that due to Monty's scheme, or was that a lot of Chris Paul being one of the greatest floor generals of all time and having one of the highest IQs? Like, I don't think it comes down to one thing or the other. I think it's kind of a mixture of both. Like, you have a lot more talent when you're in Phoenix. You had Devin Booker, you had Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Ayton. That was during their finals year when the Bucks beat them in the championship. So, like, it was a really good team. I think it had more talent than the Pistons do now, for sure. I think the Pistons, they're younger, they're more raw, for sure. But I definitely do think it is something to think about. I do think that he probably was carried a little bit by the Chris Paul and having Devin Booker. He'll go get you 30 a night on any given night. Having Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson clamp up your best 1 and 2 player every single night. It makes a coach look good. And then you go to Detroit and you lose 25 in a row. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think the Pistons have a bad team. Like Cade Cunningham was saying, they're not like, what is it, like 2 and I don't even know their record, 2 and terrible bad. They're not. They shouldn't be. Cade Cunningham is a number 1 overall pick for a reason. He is a generational talent. I feel like that people forget about that. Jaden Ivey. I don't really know what's going on with him. Some nights he's starting, other nights he wasn't playing. Like, I just feel like there's a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of stuff that needs to be figured out in Detroit. I think they just kind of need to set their mind to something and go, because they're already at rock bottom. Like, it can't get much worse than this. So I think they just need to kind of set their mind to something and go. Because right now it's not looking too good for Monty Williams. I don't know if he coaches another year.
Yeah. So Monty Williams is the second highest paid coach in the NBA. He was the first, actually, earlier this year until Greg Popovich got an extension. And I believe, just off the top of my head, those two teams combined, the Spurs and the Pistons, are like 6 and like 50 something. So that's kind of ironic that the two highest paid coaches in the NBA are coaching the two teams with the worst record. But as far as Monty Williams, I do agree with a lot of what you said. However, I think it is really hard to gauge a coach's impact, especially if they've been with like one franchise for a long time. So Greg Popovich, for example, on the Spurs, obviously a dynastic franchise. He was a great coach, but now that he's put in a different situation, you can kind of see, maybe where his coaching, kind of has had some holes poked in it. And as far as Monty Williams on the coaching side, I would say for the Pistons this year, the rotations have been kind of, so you have Joe Harris really not getting in the rotation at all. And Joe Harris has been one of the best catch and shoot 3-point shooters in the NBA the past, I'd say, half decade at least. And him not getting any minutes is understandable on a really bad team that's trying to, grow its young stars. But at this point, like, this is not good for morale to have your team lose 25 straight games in a row. Like, Cade Cunningham, I don't agree with you that this is a good team. I think this team, basically in any year in NBA history, is going to be like one of the 1 or 2 worst teams in the NBA. But 2, I think, like Cade said, 2 and 26 is not where they want to be at and not where they could be at. Monty Williams is just like running full bench rotations. So when your team already is losing like 95% of their games, basically, like, how can you be running all 5 of your bench players at any point in a competitive game? Most teams run 8, maybe 9-man rotations. and usually they'll never have all 5 of their bench players in, and that's just not really conducive to winning basketball. And also Jaden Ivey not playing as much as he should. Him not starting is also really weird. So
Having
I have a
Killian
lot of
Hayes,
questions. Yeah,
that one puzzles me. That one puzzles me for sure.
Mm-hmm. Like, we know who Killian Hayes is. Like, in the NBA, he's gonna be, the 8th, 9th best player on your team, or in the case of the Pistons, like the 3rd best player on your team. But we don't know who Jaden Ivey can be because he hasn't been getting minutes, and it's just disappointing. And also, I think currently, right now, Jaden Ivey is already better than Killian Hayes.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just sad. It's sad.
It is. It is a disaster class out there in Detroit, to say the least. And as a matter of fact, if I am correct, there's an onslaught of games tonight, and the Pistons right now are going to be playing against the Nets here in 15 minutes. So, is this to tie the NBA record for the most consecutive if they lose this one?
So the Nets, what's the injury report looking like on the Nets right now? Let me just take a look.
So
if they have Mikal Bridges, I'm saying no. I'm saying 100% no.
I think
Cade Cunningham really wants to win again. Yep. Okay. No.
No Lonnie Walker, no Ben Simmons, and that's all I'm seeing for Brooklyn as of right now.
Yeah. So it's looking like they're going to tie the record tonight if all goes according to plan.
Yep. I guess we're apparently praying on the Pistons' downfall here. I guess
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you look at like some of the worst teams in NBA history, you look at like I think 2010 Charlotte Bobcats, the 2016 76ers. The Bulls, after Michael Jordan left, were really, really, really bad. Like the best player on that team, like basically all of the starters were gone from the Bulls. It's just ridiculous. And those teams, like when they're really bad, it's like the first year of rebuild. It's like they just shipped out all of their star players. They just had a really awful playoff run. They had to reboot, and this is like the first year, maybe second year. In the case of the Pistons, this is like the 5th year of their rebuild. And it's like, you can't be having like winning less than 10 games in a season when you're in the 5th year of your rebuild. Like if you look at other teams around the NBA, the Nets are in the first year of the rebuild and they're already way better than the Pistons. Like they're infinitely better than the Pistons. The Cavs after LeBron, they were pretty bad, first couple of years, but now they got Donovan Mitchell, they got Jared Allen, they got Evan Mobley, they got some guys, and they're building towards, becoming a better team. The Pistons just have not been able to do that. And it's just the front office is making really just awful decisions in terms of how to move forward this roster. They have one first-round draft pick available to trade right now. So even if they wanted to get better, they can't.
Yeah,
they don't have any draft.
They're screwed.
So it's
they're screwed. Yeah,
the Pistons.
Changes need to be made in Detroit. I full-heartedly agree with you. After that, we'll kind of transition out to my next topic that I wanted to talk about. There's some interesting stuff going on in Golden State right now. As we know, Draymond Green is currently suspended indefinitely. So, with that being said, there opens up a spot for some younger players to step in. And with that being said, Jonathan Kuminga and Trayce Jackson-Davis have blown me away over the last 3 games. Over the last 3, Trayce Jackson-Davis last night he had 10 points, 15 boards, 3 assists, and a block against Washington on 71% from the field. A game against Boston, he had 10 points, 13 boards, 3 blocks, and he was plus 25 in the plus-minus when he was on the court. And then the game before against Portland, he had 14 points, 8 boards, 2 steals, a block in 17 minutes, and was plus 8 on the floor. And that really shocked me. Trayce Jackson-Davis was a late second-round guy coming out of Indiana. I knew a little bit about him coming into the draft. He wasn't a guy that I was really super high on. But just another diamond in the rough that Golden State found somehow, some way. Bouncing to the other side of things. Jonathan Kuminga, over his last 10 games, has averaged 15.2 points, has had 5.1 rebounds, 1.2 assists, and he shot 61% from the field. Some of his notable games over the last 10 against Boston, he had 17, 7 on 8 for 13. Against the Clippers, he had 17 points, 6 boards on 6 for 8. Against the Thunder, he had 24 points, 12 rebounds. I think personally that Golden State should think about moving on from Draymond Green. He does nothing but, I guess you could say, cause issues. As you guys know, he had the whole deal with Yusuf Nurkic, Rudy Gobert. The whole thing was brought up, oh, Draymond doesn't want to play when Steph Curry doesn't play. And I do believe there's some truth to that. And I just don't think that's good for the game of basketball. So I think that Golden State should possibly look at moving Draymond Green in the offseason.
So I have a question for you. What team would want Draymond Green on the roster, and how much would they be willing to give up for a Draymond Green?
That's what I'm thinking. I'm unsure. And we can even bounce this further. Is Draymond's time in the NBA possibly coming to an end? Did he possibly screw himself out of a job? You know, I don't see any team that's going to want somebody who they're going to have to worry about going out and punching a player, choking a player, you know, like it's not good for their team. It's not good for the league. Nobody wants it. So I definitely think that should be in the back of people's heads when considering the future of Golden State and Draymond Green's career.
Yeah, Golden State looking pretty rough right now. Steph Curry is still incredibly elite. He's been slowing down, I'd say, a little bit. He had one of the worst games I've ever seen from him the other day. He had like 7 points, went 0 for 8 from 3, but that's just kind of an outlier. He's carrying this team. Klay Thompson has had a good last couple games, but it's looking like it's just kind of a changing of the guard of the NBA. I mean, Steve Kerr might not stick around that much longer. And Draymond Green's, I think, just kind of one of the first pieces to fall in that, you know, one of the first dominoes to fall in that entire situation. And this is kind of an outcome that every team has to go through after a dynasty. I mentioned the Bulls earlier. The Lakers have gone through this multiple different times. I don't really feel too bad for them about that. But yeah, Draymond Green, indefinite suspension. He's already served a couple of those games. But looking at some of the other players that have received indefinite suspensions in NBA history before, I mean, John Morant just was suspended indefinitely last year. That was only, I believe, 8 or 9 games. And usually it's around 8 or 9 games for an indefinite suspension. I think it's a little bit different now that Draymond Green just has this, you know, laundry list of players that he's gotten in fights with. And he does it on national television as well. So like you said, it's not good for the NBA. And I don't think he's going to be out of the NBA because there's going to be, you know, one of these, you know, really bad teams that might pick up on
the Pistons.
Well, Pistons might pick up Draymond. That'd be hilarious.
That would be hilarious.
But I don't think as a contender, like, do you want to gamble on Draymond Green? Like, you know, just hurting your franchise. Like, you've seen Draymond Green, like, he's still an incredible defender. It's not like he's a bad basketball player anymore.
No,
he's kind of, you know, falling out. He's not certainly not his prime anymore. But like, is he still a top 10 defender in the NBA for my money? Yes, he for sure is. One of the most versatile defenders of all time. Draymond Green is incredible as a basketball player, but is he just not coming to grips with the fact that he's not as good as he used to be? Like, what's the reason that he's not? He's not the same anymore. He used to only, you know, the reason that he would get in these fights and have these incidents is because he's just playing super hard. That's his personality. But it seems now that, like, the thing with Yusuf Nurkic, he's just like frustrated. It seems like, right. And that's just the Warriors. That they don't really have a shot, in my opinion, at the title this year. And I don't think they're going to trade Steph Curry. I don't think they're going to trade Klay Thompson for all that they've done for them. I think they're just going to ride off to the sunset next couple of years. And, you know, Trace Jackson Davis and Jonathan Kuminga are cool. They're fun. Can they be like all-stars in the future? Like, maybe. But like in terms of the next couple of years, like, it's not looking good for the Warriors.
I agree with you. While we're still on the topic of the Warriors, something else that I wanted to talk about is just Klay Thompson. Klay has definitely had a very, very interesting year. He's been very up and down. Charles Barkley had that comment, that brother will be delivering my DoorDash soon, and that made me laugh. That put a smile on my face. And before that comment, it was kind of looking like it. I was on that train with Charles Barkley. Clay was averaging just under 16 a game, about 3.5 boards and 2 assists, and he was shooting 40% from the field and about 35% from three. And having the stigma around you and Steph Curry is the best shooter of all time, like 36, 35%, it's not, obviously it's not under what you want, but it's not a terrible shooting mark. Like, you know what I'm saying here? Not at all. But I feel like Klay Thompson is kind of getting the short end of the stick here, just because he is one of the greatest shooters of all time, and I feel like he's getting thrown under the bus a little bit. Shooters are still going to shoot. They're going to have bad nights. Stuff's going to happen. But after that comment, I don't know if it lit a fire under Klay or what. But Klay in his last 10 has been averaging 20 and a half points. He has 4.5 boards, 2 assists, and he's shooting about 45% from the field and 40% from three over the last 10. So definitely good for Golden State. But like you said, it doesn't really move me that Klay Thompson is playing better. I don't think it's going to affect anything in the grand scheme of things when it comes to the end of the year and we come towards the playoffs. But yeah, the Western Conference standings are currently standing out to me a little bit. Right now, we have the 1 seed, the Wolves. Then we have the Thunder, the Nuggets, the Kings, the Clippers, the Pelicans, the Mavericks, and the Rockets. And those are our top 8. And our next 3, we have the Lakers, the Suns, and the Warriors. Now, how about if we went back to the beginning of this season and we told everybody in the preseason that Steph Curry and the Warriors, LeBron James, Anthony Davis and the Lakers, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker were going to be playing teams. We're going to be fighting for the play-in. Is this kind of the passing of the torch? Is LeBron, I know we talk about this every year, is LeBron on a decline? Is Anthony Davis, is he on a decline? Kevin Durant, like I don't think necessarily that they are worse as players.
Yeah, in terms of the Lakers, so yeah, LeBron is the best 38-year-old player. Is he 39 now? I don't even know. But he's the best player at his age. Soon. Yeah, he's 38, turning on 39. He's the best player at his age in NBA history. Still, I'd say a top 10 player in the NBA. Anthony Davis up there, one of the one or two, maybe 3 best defenders the NBA. But in terms of the rest of the roster construction, like a lot of these guys just really can't shoot. D'Angelo Russell is not cutting it as a secondary playmaker to LeBron James, and he's not, super efficient. They've had some guys, step up in certain moments. Austin Reeves has been like a bright spot off the bench. But I'm not super surprised that they've gone. They're only 15 and 14 right now. Like you see this with LA, they're pretty inconsistent. They're 7-0 in the in-season tournament, and then they're 8 and 14 outside of the in-season tournament. So I think LeBron really turned it up for those couple games in the IST, but in the slug of the regular season, you just can't maintain that level of play. But I think that shows kind of flashes that if they do, get the 7, 6, 8 seed, whatever in the playoffs, it might not matter that much because LeBron can kind of will them to victories in series. But how long will that last? I don't know. Phoenix. So they kind of made a bet this offseason. They're like, okay, we have 3 guys, and let's just figure out what else we can get. Yusuf Nurkic has been good for them, but Josh Okogie as the best. Yeah. He's been good. Josh Okogie impressed me. Yeah, Nurkic has been solid, not the defender that he used to be, but he's contributing. Josh Okogie as the best defender on your team is kind of rough. Bradley Beal being out is kind of rough. Your stars are only playing 2 games together. All 3 of them is not great. And this team really, they rely on having all 3 of those guys on the floor at the same time. And if they don't get those reps in, how many games do these guys need to play in the regular season for them to be ready for the playoffs? Is this a similar situation with the Lakers where it doesn't matter what seed they get, really? But I think they do need to kind of work things out and get the gel together. You've seen this with Giannis and Dame. They kind of had like a learning curve at the beginning of the season. We had this with the Wolves last year. They kind of had a learning curve with Rudy Gobert and Anthony Edwards working together, and Cat was out the entire season basically. So honestly, the Suns don't really scare me right now. Even if Bradley Beal does come back, I think he's like out for another couple weeks. But we're getting closer to that halfway point of the season, and you got to have your guys healthy. So this is really a changing of the guard in the NBA. And in these next couple of years, like these guys are going to retire. Like Kevin Durant's going to retire. LeBron James is going to retire. Steph Curry is going to retire. Like who's going to be the next face of the NBA? And it's looking awesome. Like this is the best time in the NBA for these new players to start coming in and, you know, taking the reins, like a Ja Morant, like a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, like an Anthony Edwards, like Luka Doncic isn't super new, but you know he's going to be running the league for the next decade. So I'm really excited for that. It's also sad to see, you know, these guys that we've watched for decade, 2 decades almost, kind of start to fall out of favor in the standings.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. It is definitely sad to see the decline of all of these players. All right, the last topic that I would like to cover so far has been the Clippers. The Clippers are definitely starting to put stuff together after this James Harden trade. It was looking super rough. They had the 0-6 start. Social media was blowing up about it. There was always a ton of buzz around the league about it. James Harden made that comment, "I'm not a system player, I'm a system." And since then, the Clippers have looked great. They've been 9-2 in their last 11. They got blown out by the Celtics today by like 40 points almost. I was watching that, and that one was rough. But what surprised me throughout the game, the Clippers didn't look bad. There wasn't like any point in the game where I was like, wow, like I'm very like unimpressed. The Celtics are just that great of an offensive team. They shot the shit out of the ball. It was crazy. The Celtics are just an offensive juggernaut. So as a Clippers fan, for Clippers fans, I definitely think that this year I think there's a possible run in the playoffs. Like you were saying earlier, the Lakers, the Suns, the Warriors, those aren't really teams that move me. Obviously, like you said earlier, you're going to have to worry about, obviously, the LeBron James, because you said he can just will a team through a series. But they're a team that I definitely would keep an eye on. I've been watching them a lot more over the last couple of weeks. They've definitely caught my attention. James Harden sent over the last 10 games has had 20, 9.5 and 5.5. Great numbers. Kawhi Leonard has been averaging about 29 a game, 6.1 rebounds and 4 assists. PG 25 and 5. Russell Westbrook has had 9.5, 6, 3, and 19 minutes off the bench. And Ivica Zubac, 12.5, 9, and 1.5 blocks. Norman Powell has also been super great for the Clippers this year. He's had 16.3 and 3 rebounds, and he's been shooting about 55% from the field. I know every year we have this conversation. Clippers fans are, this is our year. We're contenders. We're in it this year. Then the Kawhi Leonard, he gets his yearly injury, and then people think he sits out too long. Something else hurts. Paul George will have an injury that'll set him out for a month. That'll set him out for maybe 2 months, something like that. But I think with the trajectory that the Clippers are on right now, I think that they are a real threat in the West. They're one of my favorites to come out. My 3 favorites right now currently, being the Wolves, the Nuggets, and then the Clippers. Those are my top 3. So Clippers are definitely a team that I have super high expectations for in the remainder of the year, and a team that I hope to see succeed.
Yeah, the Clippers started off pretty rough. I think they went 0-6 in the first couple of games with James Harden. And people started to say that James Harden was the problem, not the we're gonna have to cut this out. James Harden's not the problem, but he's the what did he say? He's the system. Yeah,
He's the system.
Here's the system. The system. So James Harden said he was the system. Lost their first 6 games. People started to say that he was the problem, and it kind of seemed like they were kind of getting each other's way. So you got Paul George, super ball dominant player. Kawhi Leonard is a very ball dominant player. Russell Westbrook, James Harden. You have 4 players on your team that basically need the ball to be at their best. So I think there's a little bit of a compromise that they've taken, trying to just stack as much talent as they can together, and just try to make just a super team. We've seen this before, time and time and time again. The Nets in 2021, they could have gone on a run if they didn't have those injuries and if Kevin Durant didn't step on the line. But super teams over the last few years have not really fared super well, mostly because of, I think the biggest part is there's redundancy in style of play. I think the biggest example of that is Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic in Dallas. Very similar styles of play. Both need the ball a lot, especially Luka Doncic has one of the highest usage ratings, if not the highest usage rating in NBA history. And Kyrie Irving also needs the ball. So I think that's been a problem. But I think they're kind of overcoming some of those issues just with straight up talent. And that's kind of what's willed them to these victories. They've lost their last 2 to some really good teams, the Thunder and the Celtics. Let me just look at who they've played the last couple days. So, yeah, they lost to the Thunder, lost to the Celtics. They beat the Mavericks, Pacers. They beat the Warriors, Knicks, Kings, Blazers, Jazz, Nuggets. They beat the Warriors, and then the last loss that they have was to the Warriors on November 30th. So they beat some pretty good teams in there. And you have them as one of your top 3 contenders in the West.
I do.
Did you have them
yes.
Are they at 2? Are they at 3? You have them over the Nuggets?
I have them at 3 right now. I still think Denver, you can't count out the reigning champs. Nikola Jokic, for my money, is still the best player. I'm sorry. I hate you, Joel Embiid. Nikola Jokic is still the best player in the league. He's still going to go out and do his thing night in, night out. So I feel like it's just hard to put the Clippers over the Nuggets.
Yeah. And in terms of the Western Conference standings, it's a bloodbath. It's a bloodbath in the West. You have a couple bad teams, mostly in the East. And then to make the playoffs in the West, it's going to be kind of hard. Right now, you have the Golden State Warriors outside of the top 10, and they're 500, which is insane. And then there's a huge drop-off from the Warriors, who are 500, and then the Jazz, who are 11 and 18. So you got a couple bad teams in there, and it's really kind of tightly packed. It's going to be a very interesting playoff race. In the East, it's a little bit different. The East, it's there's some incredibly dominant teams at the top of the standings. You have Minnesota, and then the Thunder are 18 and 8. The Nuggets are 20 and 10 as the 3 seed. That can change. You can get another team popping up into that 1, 2, 3 seed. I wouldn't be surprised if the Clippers finish in the top 3. I would be surprised if the Pelicans make it to the top 3. I think they have some problems on that team.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Looking at the Kings, what do you think about the Kings? Are the Kings a contender at all? Or are they just kind of like they were last year, just kind of one team that's not going to make noise in the playoffs? What do you think?
I definitely think the Kings could definitely make some noise in the playoffs. I think stuff kind of has to go their way. You know what I'm saying? I can't necessarily put my finger on what it is specifically, but some things are just going to need to go in the Kings' favor, whether that be certain teams beating other teams, certain seeding when that comes time. You're going to need you need Keegan Murray to play at the level that he's been playing over these last couple of weeks for the rest of the season. Is that going to continue? Is Domantas Sabonis going to give you a consistent triple-double night in, night out? Can De'Aaron Fox, can he stay healthy? Can he keep that ankle healthy? There's just a lot of things that go into the Kings. So I think if the ball swings in their favor, that yes, the Kings could definitely make some noise. Could be a second round, even a Western Conference Finals team. I don't see them coming out of the West. I don't think they're beating an OKC, a Minnesota, a Denver in 7 games. I just don't see it happening. But the Kings, I definitely do have making the playoffs is around like anywhere from like a 4 to a 6 seed. Just like I said earlier, it depends what swings in their favor.
Yeah, I think I agree with you mostly on that. There's some, just in terms of matchups, some kind of rough matchups in the NBA. I don't think there's any team that matches up super well with Denver. But in terms of Sacramento, like if you have Domantas Sabonis as your starting center, it's kind of rough in terms of Nikola Jokic. He's not going to be able to stop him on any night of the week.
Right.
Also in Minnesota, Karl Anthony Towns is not going to be able to be defended by Domantas Sabonis, and then Rudy Gobert is going to, kind of try to put a stop to him, and De'Aaron Fox is going to have to, really, really go to town against Anthony Edwards if he's going to try it. If it's like a 1-8 or 2-7 matchup, I think those teams I don't think they're making out of the first round if they face those teams in the first round. But the Thunder, like if they face the Thunder, I feel like they could beat the Thunder. They match up well. They're both, high scoring teams. The Pelicans, they could beat the Pelicans. I think they could beat the Clippers. So yeah, I think the Kings can be scary this year. Do you have any other topics you want to talk about?
That kind of rounded out everything that I had that was notable. So we can bounce to some stuff that you had.
All right. So the couple things I have. First of all, Joel Embiid, just crazy statistics this year.
Insane.
He is already one of the best scorers in NBA history. Just looking at his stats so far for this year, points per game, nearly 35. So the most since his former teammate James Harden, and the most for a center since Wilt Chamberlain. So he's averaging, if you take a look at the top scorers in terms of points per game in NBA history, Joel Embiid I think is third right now behind Michael Jordan and Wilt Chamberlain. But if you look at the amount of minutes they played, like most of the guys are in the high 30s, low 40s per game, and you have Joel Embiid at like 31 per game.
Yeah.
So Joel Embiid is scoring at
that in our last
ridiculous rate. Ridiculous rate. Yes. And I think some of that you kind of have to adjust for the era that we're currently in. So we're in an era where teams are scoring like almost, I think a league average around the NBA is like 118, 119 points per 100 possessions. And that gives you kind of more opportunities to score the basketball, especially when you're able to take a bunch of free throws. So,
yes, I actually also do have a point down in my notes about offensive efficiency that I actually did forget to cover, too, when we were talking about that Monty Williams thing real quick. So back to like you said, real quick, it is a very, it's a different league than it was even 5 years ago. It's a very offensive league. Right now, the Pistons have a 109 offensive rating, right? And the 2016-17 Warriors, when they were considered one of the greatest offensive teams of all time, their rating was 115.6. And right now, where their rating would land them at today's NBA would be 14. So that kind of just goes to show offensive league, how much the league has changed and how much growth has, and how much players have grown, how much training has improved. And I think it's really impressive. I don't think defense is getting worse. I think players are just continue to get better all the time.
Yes, and also I think that has to do with some of the rule changes. It seems like since the beginning of the NBA, like it seems like when traveling was first invented, you're really only allowed to take like 1.5 steps. Like you have to, once you pick up the ball, you get 2 steps, and that's very strict. But nowadays you can basically take like 3. It seems like you can take even more than 3 steps. It seems like Giannis every single game takes 3, almost 4 steps on a drive, and then the refs don't even bat an eye. Carrying has been really lax. Really, guys like Jordan Poole like put their hand like almost under the ball and don't get a call. He sometimes does get a call, just because his handle and with that is not super solid. But like the NBA obviously has made it easier for offenses to succeed, and that's good for marketing. It's good for just making more money for the league. The higher the point totals, people want to watch the games more. They want to see more shots go in when they go to see a game. They don't want to see a defensive first game where you got the 2000, I forget, it was 2003 or 2004, the Pacers Pistons, like every single game was like 60, 70, 80 point totals. That's one of my favorite playoff series in NBA history. But yeah, it's easier to score than ever. But still, Joel Embiid is like far and away the best scorer, like pure scorer right now in the NBA. He's just incredible at drawing fouls. Is it easier to draw fouls in today's NBA? I'm not sure. But like, who would I take as a better scorer than Joel Embiid? I think he might be like top 10, top 5 like scorers of all time.
Yeah,
and that's really
I think that's a valid take.
Legacy.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to. We'd have to do an entire episode on this. I need to prepare more. But if we want to run like the top 10 like offensive NBA players in NBA history, or just top 10 like pure scorers, like Joel Embiid is in that mix. And like, would I take him over like someone like Kobe Bryant? Would I take him over someone like Nikola Jokic? I don't think I would take him over Nikola Jokic as an offensive player, but as a scorer, like he can score as a center in like basically any way. He can hit it from the mid range. He can hit it from the 3. He can hit it from inside the arc, in the paint. And people will criticize him like he shoots too many mid range, because that's not super in style in today's NBA. But the mid range shot is something that a lot of teams go to when they can't get a 3 and they can't get a layup late in the clock, and that's valuable.
Right.
Yeah, Joel Embiid has blown me away this season. I think right now he's a runaway MVP for me. But
yes,
that's all I got to say about him. For my next topic, can the Grizzlies make noise in the playoffs? What do you think about this, Matt?
I definitely think the Grizzlies can make it to the playoffs. Make noise. I'm not sure. We've only had tonight is our 3rd game with John Morant. So I feel like we just don't have a big enough of a sample size yet. So going off the 2 games that we have seen, I think it's a possibility. Yeah, I think the Grizzlies can make some noise. They're a fun young team to watch. They definitely compel everybody to watch them. They're dancing around, Jaws jumping 90 feet in the air. They draw tons of attention. So I think that yes, the Grizzlies definitely could make some noise, but again, it's kind of like similar situation with the Kings. I think a lot of stuff has to go the Grizzlies' way. They have been beyond plagued by the injury bug this year. Might possibly go down as one of the most unlucky teams ever in NBA history. I think they're down at one point this year, they were down their starting 8, excluding Desmond Bane. So you're running guys like Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson, and a bunch of bums. I can't even think of anybody. So it's definitely rough. But if stuff swings the Grizzlies' way, then Memphis is always a team that you're going to have to worry about, I think.
Yeah, and if they even wanted to make it to 500 this year, they have to win 75% of their next 44 games or 55 games. So they have to basically play, I believe, like a 50, 51, 52 win pace to even get it to 500, which is like kind of the minimum for being able to even be a 10 seed in the NBA today. So they're definitely, I don't think they can make a top 6 seed. I don't even know if that's mathematically possible for them right now. But for them to make, the 7, 8, 9, 10 seed, they're going to want to shoot for that. And then in terms of matchups, they have an incredible defensive. I wouldn't call Jaren Jackson Jr. a center. He's kind of had to play center this year, and him not being able to rebound very well and him fouling a lot, that's not the best position for him. So he's kind of not played as well as he could this year. Desmond Bane has shown flashes that he can be a number 1 option on a bad team. You don't want him to be a number 1 option on a good team, right? So him being able to slot into that secondary scoring role is really going to be awesome for him. And the way that they've already clicked, this team has played together for years, but the way that they've already kind of gotten back to their winning ways and winning these last 2 games is cool to see. And I think they can, maybe win a few games in the first round, but this might just be a gap year for them. And it's kind of sad to see that. We kind of already talked about this. The Suns are screwed.
Yep.
If they don't have their three best players on the floor on a given night, like, it's going to be hard for them to win because they're so shallow in terms of their bench, and you have to go to players that are either like can only play offense or can only play defense, and it's really like their defense is not very good this year, and they have to have those three guys on the floor to win games. The Bulls are really bad this year. However, they've been kind of on a little bit of a sneaky run in the last couple of games. They're actually now in the 10 seed, which is kind of crazy because they're 3-17. Just goes to show how much easier it is to make the playoffs right now in the East than in the West. They've won 7 of their last 10. They're on a 3-game winning streak, and this is all without their star player, supposedly best or second best player on the team, Zach LaVine. I'm starting to maybe doubt that Zach LaVine can be like a second best player on the championship team. I think he can be like a third or fourth best player, but he's really valuable. He can play on ball, he can play off ball. Incredible 3-point shooter, obviously an incredible athlete. But in terms of defense, he doesn't really bring a lot to the table. In terms of versatility, he doesn't rebound a ton. He doesn't it's not a great passer. But I think like on the Lakers, if somehow the Lakers could acquire Zach LaVine, there's been some rumors about that. That's a very interesting addition to that team. But I think the Bulls just need to blow it up, get rid of DeMar DeRozan, get rid of Zach LaVine, and rebuild, because they do have some pieces like Kobe White. Kobe White's been shooting, it feels like 50% from three.
Kobe White's been outstanding.
Yeah, Kobe White's been absolutely balling out. Do you have anything to say about this?
No. Yeah, I actually do. I think personally, I agree with you full-heartedly. I think the Bulls need to blow this whole thing up. I think the Bulls need to enter a full rebuild. I think you ship off Kobe White now too. I think this year, right now, you ship off Kobe White at the deadline. He's playing the best basketball of his career, or some of the best basketball of his career. His value is going to be as high as it is. Maybe you could go out. Maybe you go get a first-round pick for him. Like you never know what's going to be on the table. I think if you are Chicago, you do need to start looking to ship off Zach LaVine as well. You gave it a shot. It worked when they had Lonzo. Unfortunately, Lonzo just hasn't been able to stay healthy. He's gotten hit with the injury bug time in and time out in his career. So, like you said, I don't think Zach LaVine can necessarily be a number 2, and especially not a number 1 option on a championship team. So, I think Chicago, blow it up over these next 5 years. Young talent, get some vets, reset.
Yeah, I think that's what the Bulls need to do. They are, like I said, on a run. They could, definitely make the playoffs this year. But if this team makes out of the first round, I would bet, I don't know how much money I would bet that they don't make it out of the first round. But it'd probably be all everything I got.
I'd take out my savings. I'd go to Vegas and I'd roll down the Bulls not making out of the first round.
Exactly. And then my last thing I got is the Cavs. So the Cavs have also been extremely unlucky this year. Just about a week ago, it was announced that both Evan Mobley and Darius Garland are out for like 6 weeks. So now it's Jared Allen, and Donovan Mitchell has also been dealing with some injuries. And it's like they can't really do much without those 2 big men on the floor defensively. But then also when they do have those 2 big men on the floor, like the shooting is awful because you have 2 basically non-shooters. So it's very easy as a defense to scheme against that, and that you only have to guard 3 players in the 3-point line. And Evan Mobley is, is shooting even less than he did last year. And is Donovan Mitchell going to the Knicks? Is Donovan Mitchell going, to the Lakers? I don't think he really has a future there in Cleveland in terms of trying to win a championship, which is obviously what he's trying to do. But he is under contract for the rest of this year. I just wouldn't be surprised if he got traded next offseason. I don't think they should let go of him now. I think this is just a gap year for them. They're still a good young team. If they get Donovan Mitchell off and try to, get another young guard in a couple of years' time, hopefully, the kind of the hope is that Evan Mobley turns into a Rudy Gobert type of player. Obviously, he might not, discover that shooting touch. But if he's able to be on the floor without Jared Allen, they can ship Jared Allen out, and they can boost their offense by having 4 shooters on the floor on 1 non-shooter, and kind of look a little bit more like Minnesota in the fact that like they actually have like some decent shooters on the team. But obviously Rudy Gobert can't really shoot for anything. I think that's really all I got for today.
I gotcha. Well, sweet. That is gonna, I think, wrap up this episode for today. So yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate you watching, and we will be seeing you guys in the next episode.
Yeah, we will. One last thing, if you guys want to comment anything, I don't know if you watch this on YouTube, we might upload this to Spotify. We're definitely desperate for video ideas. We're trying to think of some stuff. And if you guys can comment what you want to see from us, the next couple episodes, or your thoughts on our episode so far, we try to gather some info about that as well. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. See ya.